この明かりは星の希望。地を照らす命の証。見るがいい。エクスカリバー。
At the end of this year's HSR concert, HSR fans have been given a minute of footage detailing the upcoming collab dropping on July 11th, the Fate Stay Night Unlimited Bladeworks collab. The confirmed units were Archer and Saber, with Archer being the free unit. Around the end of August last year, there was a small teaser for the collab featuring Facial and soft confirming Archer. But now that both he and Saber have been confirmed, Fate fans can rejoice in seeing Baber and Gar in their favorite Hoyo game. But what about those who don't know these characters? People who haven't consumed a single form of Fate media or who have only watched the anime, which honestly speaking, glosses over a lot of stuff that was featured in the original visual novel. That's where this video comes in. Here, I will be going through a basic background check on both Saber and Archer, and will also go on their hypothetical kits until the official release. So I suggest you get comfortable and have a notepad with you, cause as much as I want to say it's simple, it's not. It never is with Fate. Also, spoilers ahead. Don't say I didn't warn you. Since he is a free unit, I will start with the Gar Red Archer, Counter Guardian Emiya, one of the main supporting characters or antagonists in the original visual novel. Emiya, or Emiyashiro, was a survivor of a great fire that engulfed his hometown of Fuyuki. Due to the trauma of being in said catastrophe, he has lost all memories of his previous life and ended up walking through the fire alone and on the verge of death. As he was about to succumb to his wounds, a man grabs his hand, shouting how he was able to find someone who is alive, someone he could finally save. As Shiro looks up, he sees a smile, one he would describe as a beautiful smile. It was here that Emiya's life would be set in stone. The journey that he would lead throughout his life was all because of this moment. Later in a hospital, Shiro met up with the man, who would be known as his adopted father, Emiya Kiritsugu. Kiritsugu introduces himself as a magician, and he later adopts Shiro, and they start to live together in a Japanese-style mansion in Fuyuki. One night, as they were doing their usual moon gazing, Kiritsugu opened up about his past.
子供の頃、僕は正義の味方に憧れてた。
なんだよそれ、憧れてたって諦めたのかよ。
うん、残念ながらね。ヒーローは期間限定で、大人になると名乗るのが難しくなるんだ。そんなこと、もっと早くに気がつけばよかった。
After hearing his reasoning, it didn't take long for Shiro to make up his mind.
そうだね。本当にしょうがない。
うん、しょうがないから、俺が代わりになってやるよ。
ん？
じいさんは大人だからもう無理だけど、俺なら大丈夫だろ。任せろって、じいさんの夢は。
そうか。安心した。
Kiritsugu can only smile and look relief, as if he was free from a burden he had been carrying all his life. That night, Shiro Emiya inherited his father's dream, not knowing that said dream would lead him to a life of tragedy and despair. Now here it gets a little bit tricky, since between that time and when Shiro ends up becoming Archer, it's a little ambiguous on how he gets to the point where he swaps color palettes. Either he went through one of the three routes in the original visual novel, the Fate route or the Unlimited Bladeworks route, or he went through an unknown route that was never shown in the game. But his transition to Archer began when he left his hometown of Fuyuki and started traveling abroad to help and save people from all around the world. Shiro would go to places in the world where people needed help the most, particularly places like war zones and countries with civil unrest. Sometime during his travels, as he finished a mission, he made a pact with a system known as Alaya. What is Alaya? Well, I suggest paying attention a bit more because it gets a little complicated. In the Fate verse, or the Nasu verse as it's also called, planets have a soul and a consciousness. Earth's soul, also known as Gaia, is a collective of aspects and concepts that are part of an overall system. One of these concepts is called the counterforce. Are you still following? Great, because there's more. The counterforce is composed of two types, Gaia and Alaya. To put it short, Gaia cares about the planet overall and its inhabitants, while Alaya focuses more on the survival of the human race. Gaia's desire is for its survival, the protection of planet Earth and all of its inhabitants. But as humanity grows independent from Earth, and with how much it's destroying the planet, Gaia is not perceiving them as a threat to itself. Alaya's function is to steer humanity from extinction in certain events that happen in history or during the modern era, through indirect and subtle guidance to certain humans and their surroundings. If that doesn't work, then they will intervene directly by sending in the Counter Guardians or Heroic Spirits. What are the Counter Guardians and Heroic Spirits? Finish up writing about Gaia and the Counterforce and turn to a new page, because it doesn't stop here. Counter Guardians are the cleanup crew of Alaya, which means whoever or whatever is threatening humanity will be dealt with sufficient force. Heroic Spirits, or Servants as they are also called, are copies of the souls of heroes that have affected human history and society, who are then brought back to life for various reasons. The name is kind of misleading since it's not just heroes, but also anti-heroes and villains that can be summoned. There are many types of heroic spirits, but the gist is that figures like Achilles, Siegfried, Jeanne d'Arc, James Moriarty, and Nikola Tesla can all be summoned into the modern era. Toko Awazaki, a prominent figure in the Nasuverse, suggested it was the Counterforce that was responsible for the sinking of Atlantis, which was disproved in other type moon works since it was the White Titan that destroyed the city among other ancient civilizations. Don't worry, we won't be going into what the White Titan is, but this is just to put into perspective on how and when the Counterforce chooses to intervene, even if Toko's theory was false. So with that out of the way, let's go back to Archer Emiya. Shiro made a pact with Alaya, in which, when Shiro dies, he will become a Counter Guardian. After that, Shiro continued his journey. It was not a pretty one. To save one person, it meant sacrificing another. He had to kill countless people just to finish an objective and save as many people as possible. One day, as he was finishing a mission, he was stopped by the very people he was protecting. Someone framed him for being the one responsible for the war he was assisting in.
嘘だ、あーちゃん。あなたの最後は。
Shiro was betrayed by the very people he was protecting, and it wasn't over, because if you remember, he made a pact with Alaya. When he dies, he will become a Counter Guardian. And so, for eternity, he would continue to do what he always did, killing people who threatened humanity and the innocents. Instead of saving people, he took the lives of countless others. He would save entire nations, but would sacrifice the lives of others to achieve his mission. He would forget his own name and even all the people in his life. His sister figures, the friends he had in high school, even the woman who he may or may not have had a relationship with. He does end up remembering when he gets summoned again in the visual novel, but most of the time, it's implied that he has forgotten their names and faces, only remembering the nameless faces when he sees them in the events of Fate's Day Night. Due to the constant use of his magecraft, which is the magic, as it's called in the Nasuverse, his auburn hair turned snow white and his skin tanned to a darker tone. After killing for so long, he finally realized. The dream he admired, the one inherited by the man he looks up to the most, it was a curse. A curse that was passed down from his father to him. One he has to live for the rest of his existence. He truly believed that if he could save people just like his father did to him, he could smile like he did that time and truly be happy, just as Kiritsugu was when he rescued Shiro. But as he followed his father's path, his ideals betrayed him countless times over and over again, even after death, which would lead to the Counter Guardian finding a way to rid himself of his existence, no matter how futile that attempt might be. This finally leads us to the events of Fate's Day Night, specifically the Unlimited Bladeworks route. Here, he plans to kill his foolish younger self, to finally rid the existence that would become Counter Guardian Emiya. He knows it won't save him, but he will at least prevent another Emiya from coming into being. It will give him the satisfaction that he prevented another cursed failure to be born once again.
それがこの俺、英霊エミヤの正体だ。そんな男は今のうちに死んだ方が世のためだと思わないか。自害しろ。 エミヤシロ。
Archer is a tragic character, a man who has doomed himself into eternal servitude and was turned into a killing machine. His character and subsequently Emiyashiro's character is so fascinating that I cannot do it justice in this video. Unlimited Blade Works and Heaven's Feel really play on his views of being a hero of justice, so give those a watch or read the visual novel if you can. I genuinely think it's worth it. But with Archer's background out of the way, let's get started on the second half of his little resume, his abilities.
アーチャー、手助けはしないわ。あなたの力、ここで見せて。
When it comes to fighting, Emiya is a fairly powerful and skillful warrior. Not the best of the best, but certainly not bad either. His versatility and combat experience really carry him, especially against fighters like Lancer and Berserker. When it comes to his class, you know, the one that uses bows, he is, to put it simply, a prodigy. He was so good that when he was young, he stopped going into archery contests because there was nothing left for him to learn. It was simply a ritual for him at that point. You can see his prowess with the bow when Archer attacks from long distances and with how accurate his shots are. But it's not just his physical prowess that aids him in combat. The one thing that gives him the advantage in most of his fights comes in the form of his magical abilities. When it comes to magecraft, Emiya sucks. The spells that he knows are considered unremarkable and useless in the magical society of Fate. But he still makes it work. He knows Reinforcement, which allows him to strengthen the durability of parts of his bodies, items, and the weapons he uses. This is a spell he uses to bridge his lack of strength and speed against opponents who are superior to him in combat. He also has another spell called Structural Analysis. This spell allows him to see the information of whatever item or weapon at his disposal. The materials, its creation process, even the history of the item. It's a spell used by Emiya to find weak points or ascertain how his opponents fight. Since knowing an item, mainly a weapon's history, allows him to see how the weapon was used in combat. Finally, we get to his main ability, Projection.
俺が倒れたら遠坂が死ぬ。それはダメだ。武器だ。戦うための武器がいる。強い武器があいつが持っていたようだ。強い武器が。ザ・エースポン。
Projection is a modified version of Gradation Air that was invented and is primarily used by Archer and Emiyashiro. They usually call it Tracing, with their own personal casting mantra being Trace On. Tracing is different from Gradation Air in the fact that while using the spell with Structural Analysis, the entire history of the object is replicated as well, not just its form and the components used to make the object, as it's used in Gradation Air. This detail changes everything, in which Shiro and Emiya can not just replicate weapons they see due to structural analysis, but also the way it was used and its abilities. Let's go back to HSR and use them as an example. If Emiya sees Trailblazer's lance, he can not only copy it, but use the lance's abilities and the Trailblazer's fighting style. I would go as far as to say that he can also trace Welt's cane and do the black hole things that he can do in the game, which, you know, is kind of crazy when you think about it. There is a catch though. Anything he traces will be a degraded version of the object that he just traced. In other words, if the Trailblazer's lance were to clash with Archer's lance, the Trailblazer's lance would always win. So with Archer's main gimmick out of the way, let's start talking about his servant and heroic spirit abilities, which are known as his skills. Let's start with his class skills. Archer has Magic Resistance D. It allows him to cancel out weak magic spells before they reach him. It's not that good against powerful attacks, but if a weak spell were to be fired at him, it would fizzle out before it could even reach him. Independent Action B. Normally, servants need a source of magical energy to exist, or else they will fade away. Independent action allows Archer to survive for a certain amount of time without the need for magical energy. It's useful in the setting of Fate Stay Night and other Fate media, but for the sake of HSR, it's kind of whatever, right? He has personal skills as well. For personal skills, he has Clairvoyance C. This skill just assists Archer in becoming more accurate when he shoots from long distances. It is also proof of his prowess with the bow where, quote, he is skilled enough to mark 2 enemies and fire a single arrow with the intention of striking both, surpassing the normal rules being unable to alter its course. Basically, the Archer class is really made out of archers. He also possesses Mind's Eye True B, which is a skill that is a representation of his lifetime of fighting and surviving battles. It allows him to dodge life-threatening attacks by a hair if he needs to. It makes it so that if there is a chance to defeat someone, he will at least survive to make that chance happen. There's more to these skills than what I just said, but this is the most compact and simplest way of how I can explain it for anyone that's new to Fate, so I'll just leave it with that. But now that we're done with all that, we get to the good part. Archer has 2 main weapons, twin falchions with yin-yang patterns known as Kancho and Bakuya, and a large black bow made of an unknown alloy. Kancho and Bakuya are swords of legends that Emiya found in his lifetime. It was said to be part of a legend involving a blacksmith and his wife. These swords have a magnetic connection where they are constantly attracted to each other. If one were to be thrown, it would immediately double back to reunite with the other half. These swords also have anti-monster properties, which, it's good against monsters. Archer's black bow is nothing of legends. It's just a powerful and reliable bow. The alloy it was made from is primarily used for the fact that most of Archer's arrows are not true arrows but swords that he modifies using a variant of a combination of his tracing and structural analysis spells known as alteration. Because of that, he is capable of shooting targets with swords from kilometers away. Some of the arrows that he uses are primarily Kalatbolg, which, yeah, does that. And Hunting, a sword that when shot acts like a heat-seeking missile. The last thing in Archer's arsenal is not a weapon, but a shield. It's known as Ro Ayas, the shield used by the Trojan hero Aias, or Ajax the Great. This is Archer's best defensive option since, in life, it was known for blocking the spear of Hector of Troy. It's a powerful shield, which requires a lot of magical energy. It takes on the appearance of an ethereal flower and when activated, it deploys 7 layers of magical force fields, which are known as bounded fields. It's capable of stopping Lancer's Gaybold, which is classified as an anti-army noble phantasm when thrown. Although to be fair, Gaybold did pierce through 6 layers of Ro Ayas before it was finally stopped, but nonetheless, it's a very reliable defensive tool. Finally, we get to Archer's most well-known ability, his Reality Marble. Now, I know there's another weird and scary term that appeared, but don't worry, it's not as difficult as you might think. That is, if you know a certain series. Who here has watched JJK? Who here knows what a domain expansion is? If you know the 2 terms, then there you go. Reality Marbles are just domain expansions before those were a thing. But for those who don't know what a domain from JJK is, a Reality Marble is a forbidden form of magic where someone forces their inner world into the real one. Only those with a twisted view of the world can manifest a Reality Marble. Archer's Reality Marble is known as the Unlimited Blade Works. Roll credits. To manifest his Reality Marble, he has to chant a specific aria which is a representation of his lifetime.
I am the bone of my soul. Steel is my body, and fire is my blood. I have created over 1,000 blades, unknown to death, and unknown to life. Have withstood pain to create many weapons. Yet those hands will never hold anything. So as I pray, Unlimited Blade Works.
This chant is a representation of Archer's life, stating that despite everything he has done, he wasn't able to get anything at the end of his journey. This is emphasized with how each blade that rests in his Reality Marbles are reminiscent of graves, standing alone with no wielder. The chant's verses change depending on the Shiro who uses it, like the Unlimited Blade Works version or the Miyuverse version. Unlimited Blade Works is, to put it simply, a storage hardware that Archer has for every weapon he has seen. It's due to this Reality Marble that Archer is capable of copying and tracing every weapon he has ever laid eyes on. Due to Shiro Emiya's nature and magical element being simply dubbed as sword, any weapon that looks or is similar to a sword gets stored in the Unlimited Blade Works. The least mechanical a weapon is, the more simpler it is to trace. There is an exception to this rule. Archer cannot trace divine constructs, weapons created and wielded by the divine. Basically, weapons that aren't within human comprehension, like Gilgamesh's Sword of Rupture Ea. Anything his brain cannot register will not be stored in the Unlimited Blade Works.
どうする？なんだあれは。読めない。あの武器だけは構造さえ全く読み取れない。
Essentially, Archer cannot trace anything that is beyond what the human brain cannot understand, with some notable exceptions, but even then, most of the times it is stated that he would die if he attempts it.
お前の聖剣確実に複製してみせよう。
私の聖剣だと。
ああ、こちらも自滅を前提にした投影だが、真に迫ることはできる。
And other times he casually traces weapons like the Vajra or the Harp. It's weird, I know, but honestly speaking, the creator of Fate Nasu breaks his rules like once every 3 months or so, you know. It is what it is. While Emiya needs magical energy and has a startup time when he traces weapons into the real world, in the Unlimited Blade Works, he does not need it. His weapons are instantaneous, his swords at the ready answering his beck and call. With a single thought, he wills the blades to move and manifest around him, firing at his opponents in a rain of swords. I love this ability, arguably one of my favorites in all of media, and when the Emiya theme starts playing, and oh, it's just absolute cinema. I love this ability so much. It's just so good. So that's a basic of Archer's abilities. Well, as much as I can without giving you guys too much information overload. But how would this transfer into HSR? Well, for starters, his weapons when fighting would obviously be his trusty blades. So his basic attacks will be him just swinging them around at his enemies. His skill's a little harder to pinpoint since he is a jack of all trades, but since he is a hunt character, I would imagine him being single target and using follow-up attacks. So maybe he would use his bow and shoot Hood Hunting, dealing specific debuffs that reduces the target's defense or weakens them, since Hood Hunting is a sword that hunts its opponents down. Or they can say screw the hunt stereotype and give Archer an AoE skill where he shoots the enemies with Kalat Bulg and nukes everyone with it. And finally, one last attack that I can think of for his skill is a technique that he developed for his married blades, known as the triple link crane wings. It's a single target attack where he overwhelms his opponent with 3 sets of Kansho and Bakuya, throwing 2 sets before using a modified version of the swords called Overedge. The first pair are meant to be deflected. The second is to prepare for close range combat. Once the enemy gets surprised by the second pair, the first pair that were deflected come to the back of the enemy, and once everything is set, he traces Overedge versions of the swords before striking them with one final blow. This would be a flashier skill than simply shooting arrows or swinging a blade, but it would definitely bring in the cool factor for Archer. Maybe it's all 3, but the usage is similar to Daniel Alter where he needs a lot of skill points to use different attacks. It's really hard to pinpoint what he can do, since he is a jack of all trades and he has so much at his disposal, but I digress. As for his ult, well, it's obvious what it would be. At least I hope they decide to use it, because if they don't, it wouldn't make any sense. It'd be an actual crime. It's his Unlimited Blade Works. His Unlimited Blade Works is his ult in Fate, so it should definitely be in the collab. It's what he is known for. You point at Emiya and you say he is the bone of his sword. And unless the team at Hoyo is crazy, I wouldn't be surprised if that's what his ultimate is. How his ult would work is the real problem, since in the anime and the OG visual novel, it's shown as a barrage of blades. It would make sense that they would do the same in HSR, which makes me wonder why he is of the hunt and not the erudition, because all of his attacks are more in tune with AoE, but I digress. In Fate Unlimited Codes, a fighting game, surprisingly, Fate had a fighting game, but it was only a Japan thing, so of course nobody knew about it. Archer is shown using a unique super in the game called Unlimited Blade Dance, Infinite Sword Dance. And I say unique super, but it's literally his sword rain attack, so whatever. In Fate Extella and Extella Link, Emiya is shown to use not only the sword rain attack, but also the weapons of other servants when he attacks his enemies, such as Neroclaudis' Estes Estes, Gawain's Galatine, and Kukulain's Gaebol. Since this is an Unlimited Blade Works collab, maybe he could do something similar, where it's a barrage of attacks that the servants in Unlimited Blade Works use, or maybe it's something similar to Rapper or Feisho's ult, where it's not just a cutscene, but an interactable ult where Emiya can choose which weapon he can use before finally ending the ult with his sword rain attack. Yeah, again, it's really complicated because jack of all trades. What the hell would his ult look like? How would it work? How would it work for single target, since Unlimited Blade Works looks more to be year edition more than anything? But yeah. For his traces, it would probably have something to do with his class and personal skills, chance of dodging an attack maybe with Mind's Eye, increased crit rate and crit damage because of his hunt affiliation, or maybe because of his clairvoyance. That could work too as well, actually, now that I think about it. And of course, there is also a trace where it boosts up a follow-up attack, which I imagine would be shooting from his bow or using another weapon or something that he has to have a follow-up attack. That's the gimmick of the hunt. I'm kind of clueless on how Emiya would work as a hunt character. Of course, this is just baseless speculation until the real deal pops up, and I am not particularly good at tier recrafting, but if any of the skills mentioned above are used for the official kit, I would be satisfied with that. Especially Unlimited Blade Works. Please put Unlimited Blade Works. If it's not there, if you put the ult as the triple crane, the triple chippy choppa, the triple link crane wings, I would be very, very disappointed. So, with Archer out of the way, let's go to Fate's poster girl, Saber, Artoria Pendragon. Artoria, or Altria, seriously, why Nasu, is a gender-bent version of King Arthur from British legend and folklore. Summoned as the servant Saber, she is one of the main love interests of Shiro in the original visual novel. The tale of Artoria is a modern iteration of Arthurian myths. It's a story about the British Isles in the 5th century. After the withdrawal and the decline of the Roman Empire, Britain suffered greatly from not having an organized army anymore. They were constantly attacked by foreign groups such as the Saxons. This was one of Britain's darkest times and the beginning of one of the most famous legends in the world. Once upon a time, there was a mage named Merlin. Born from the union of a human maiden and an evil incubus, he would be known as the Magus of Flowers and the royal advisor of the King of Britain. On the day he became the king's royal advisor, Merlin foretold that 2 dragons, one red and one white, would decide the fate of Britain, if humans can overcome the Age of Mystics or be swallowed by it. The red dragon represented the will of Britain and its people, while the white dragon represented the invading foreign people known as the Saxons and the darkness that comes with it. The Magus foretold that the dragons had an avatar, with Uther Pendragon's heir being the incarnation of the red dragon, and another figure, later discovered to be Uther's brother Vortigern, being the incarnation of the white dragon. After hearing of the prophecy, Uther quickly scrambled to find a suitable partner to sire an heir to the throne of Britain. He would choose Igraine, the wife of one of his retainers, the Duke of Cornwall. With the aid of Merlin, he would disguise himself as the Duke, then consummate with Igraine. Later, when the child was born, Merlin would instill in the babe the aspect of a dragon, successfully making them the red dragon without altering their human form. However, Uther ran into an issue which would lead him to abandon the plan. The heir, the supposed son of Britain, was not a son, but a daughter. Despairing at the fact that he sired a daughter, Uther abandoned her and gave up on the plan, seeing that there is no way a girl could become his heir and the king of Britain. But Merlin thought differently. He believed that this child, regardless of their gender, could become king, that she was capable of leading her kingdom. Merlin would then seek the assistance of Sir Ector, a knight of Uther. Although he did not believe in Merlin's prophecy, he did see the same potential that Merlin saw in Artoria. Thus, he decided to see her grow. Ector would raise Artoria as his own child and teach her the ways of knighthood, but she would go by the name Artorius and live her life as a boy. Artoria would then spend most of her childhood training to be a knight. She would become the squire of her older adoptive brother, Sir Kay, and would train with him while simultaneously doing chores such as stable work. The young girl was already a prodigy of the blade, so much so that she would win in every spar she had with Kay, even if the girl felt she lost in every fight due to Kay winning in the arguments they got into during training. Even when she slept, Merlin would visit her in her dreams to teach her more about swordplay while also educating her on the state of affairs of Britain. This day-to-day life training with her adoptive family and mentor would go on until the day that set in motion Artoria's destiny, the day of selection. Before the day of selection, Artoria's father, Uther, was defeated by Vortigern, who revealed himself as the incarnation of the White Dragon, and he disappeared from the eyes of the masses. Vortigern became the vile king who betrayed Britain, and many of its inhabitants did not yield to him. Despite this new age of darkness, the people did not fear, for Merlin had his prophecy.
ウーサー王は後継者を選ばれている。この人物こそ時代の王、赤き竜の化身。新たな王が現れた時こそ円卓の騎士たちは集結し、白き竜は敗れ去る。王は健在なり、その証はじき現れるだろう。
His word spread throughout Britain, and hope was reignited within the Isle and its people. That was a decade ago. Despite that, the people did not lose hope, for the day of selection draws near. Londinium, the capital of Britain, was buzzing with activity and excitement. Artoria, who was in the city due to her brother forgetting his lance, heard of how the heir will be selected. He who pulls the sword from the stone shall become the new king. This is how Artoria came to know about the sword of selection. Many have tried to pull the blade, but all of them have failed. Some continued with stubborn determination. Some fell to anger and claimed something was wrong with the blade. Some even boasted they had the power to move mountains. they too also failed. And throughout all this, the man who served the king, the one who foretold the selection of the new heir by a sword and a stone, was nowhere to be seen. As the many knights failed to pull the blade, they decided to choose the next king through a jousting tournament. As they left, only Artoria and Kay remained near the sword. Artoria questioned Kay and asked if it was okay that no one was capable of pulling the sword from the stone. He said it was neither good nor bad, just a nuisance that would disturb the knights of Britain. He states that Britain did not have the time to dream alongside Uther and Merlin, how it was more humane to judge a king by how much men, money, and power a person has than a simple claim. There is no need for a powerful ruler. Interests will align, and calculating ways to work together is simple. But most importantly, if everything goes wrong, and you have to take responsibility, you can muddle your way through it. Better to be seen as another face in the crowd than an agent of God who saves everything. Kay then orders Artoria to return back home, stating how she would get bullied for her feminine figure, and that this is her first and last chance to go home. With that, Kay joins the others at the jousting tourney, while Artoria remains near the sword of selection. She knew since the very beginning that she was the one destined to pull out the blade. She trained for this her entire life. She believed that people who want to live their lives, that have nothing to do with politics or war, were truly good and beautiful. Even if she herself wanted to possess a dream as simple as that, such as the common folk, she knew that she would be incapable of living a life as such. So, Artoria steps forward.
ありがとう、ケイ兄さん。でも、ごめんなさい。
その剣を手に取る前にきちんと考えた方がいい。
驚きました。夢の外でお会いするのは初めてですね、マーリン。
悪いことは言わないからやめた方がいい。それを手にしたが最後、君は人間ではなくなるよ。それだけじゃない。手にすればあらゆる人間に恨まれ、むごたらしい死を迎えるだろ
う。いいえ。
いいのかい？
多くの人が笑っていました。それはきっと間違いではないと思います。
ああ、剣を抜いてしまったか。辛い道を選んだんだね。でも奇跡には代償が必要だ。アーサー王よ、君はその一番大切なものを引き換えにすることになる。
After pulling out Caliburn, Artoria, alongside Kay and Merlin, were journeying across Britain. Still innocent and naive, akin to a pure white lily, Artoria, alongside the ever so mischievous Merlin, would go around causing chaos on their adventures, with Kay picking up after them in the process. They would go around the country and fight many battles, and in the process would amass the Knights of the Round Table foretold by Merlin, Sir Lancelot, the Knight of the Lake, Sir Gawain, the Knight of the Sun, Sir Tristan, the Knight of Lamentation, Sir Bedivere, the Knight of Loyalty, Sir Percival, the Holy Knight of the Dove, Sir Galahad, the Knight of the Holy Shield, Sir Mordred, the Knight of Treachery, and many others such as Sir Garrett the Gentle, Sir Agravain the Executive, and Sir Gaheris and Sir Palamedes. During her travels, Artoria would lose Caliburn due to a trap set by her evil sister, the witch Morgan Le Fay, but would in turn gain Excalibur, the Sword of Promised Victory, and Avalon, the ever-distant utopia, from the Lady of the Lake. What Artoria did not know was that, in the span of her losing the Sword of Selection and gaining the Sword of Promised Victory, the innocent lily went up in flames, and from the ashes, a king was forged. But perhaps this change was necessary, for before Artoria could become King of Britain, she would need to overcome one last obstacle. After all, a white lily, while amazing on its own, is nothing compared to the wrath of a dragon of Britain.
魔竜ボーティガー、
それがブリテンを破滅に導こうとする者の正体だったのです。ボーティガーンの放った一撃で兵士たちは蒸発し、我が聖剣ガラティーンは輝きを奪われた。王の聖剣エクスカリバーの輝きもわずかに灯るかがり火のようだった。戦いは数時間に及びました。魔竜はその方向で暗雲を呼び巨大化していった。兵士たちの武器を、死肉を、城塞の瓦礫を巻き込みながら顕現する竜の首。王は知っていたのでしょう。ボーティガーンはブリテンそのものだと。アーサー王、敵はブリテン島全てを肉体とする者。聖剣といえど叶いませぬ。今は撤退を。
もう少しだけ手を貸すものだぞ、ガウェイン卿。
王、
私と貴公が揃っているのだ。島の感触の一つや二つ、聖剣の担い手なら沈めなくては立つ瀬がない。
はっ
はっ
王、魔竜の手を封じました。
それでこそガウェイン卿。もう片方に下げばこれで空には逃げられまい。
ですが、それではもう武器が。それは
最果てより光を放て。
その輝く槍は。
楚は空を裂き地をつなぐ嵐の怒り、ロンゴミニアド。ボーティガン。
愚か者どもめ、暴君を討つためにさらなる滅びを引き寄せるとは。我が弟ウーサーの子よ、お前ではこの国は救えない。なぜならもう神秘の時代は終わったのだ。この先は文明の時代、人間の時代だ。お前の根底にある力は人間とは相入れない。お前がいる限りブリテンに未来はない。呪うがいい。古きブリテンはとうの昔に滅んでいる。
After the battle against Vortigern, Artoria would then found the holy city of Camelot, whilst also getting into a political marriage with Guinevere, daughter of King Leo de Grance. But as Artoria ruled Britain, many of the common folk started to notice something. The king was perfect, too perfect, emotionless and rational, impartial to affairs in the court. She would pillage and raze villages to provide for her own army, not out of spite, but out of pure, cold, rational logic. As this inhumanity starts to reveal itself to the people of Britain, Sir Tristan would make a remark that shifts the dynamics of the Round Table and all of Britain. The king does not understand the hearts of people. He would say these very words as he left the Round Table. This inhumanity even reaches Merlin. When he was seeing off Artoria, who would travel for political affairs to Rome, they would hold a conversation where he would realize that he and Uther had made a blunder in their plans.
ありがとう、マーリン。あなたに感謝を。私にとってあなたは偉大な死だった。私はあなたのように異性と関わることはありませんでしたから、この気持ちが何なのか言葉にできないのですが、あなたがいてくれたこと、あなたが私に付き合ってくれた年月を得難く思う。もしかしたら私はあなたに恋をしていたのかもしれません。
頬を染めることもなく、乙女のように恥じることもなく、彼女は見当違いの考えを誠実に心を込めて口にした。無論それは恋ではない。人としての生活を経験しなかった彼女が今まで伝え聞いた範疇において最上の感謝を見当違いの言葉に置き換えただけだ。
Merlin taught Artoria many things to become an ideal king, but he never taught her how to be human. This would be their very last conversation. During her reign, Morgan Le Fay tricked Artoria into giving her parts of her DNA through particular means. She would then take that DNA and fuse it with her own to create Mordred, an artificial human made in Artoria's image, a homunculus. She was originally made by Morgan as another way to overthrow Artoria alongside Agravain, since her children, Gawain, Gaheris, and Garrett all served Artoria loyally, and she cannot use them to overthrow her sister. Mordred admired the king, following her with loyalty and disposing of anyone who would get in her way. One day, Morgan told Mordred of her lineage, that she was the son of King Arthur. Mordred was ecstatic that she was the child of the king she loyally followed, but when she went to Artoria to reveal herself as her son, to claim the throne, Artoria did not accept her. Mordred would then plot a rebellion in revenge for Artoria denying her claim to the throne, assembling people who did not agree with the king or those who fear her inhumanity. As this happens, Sir Lancelot and Guinevere fell in love. Sir Lancelot, wanting to find ways to help ease the burdens of his king, went to seek counsel from Guinevere, the one closest to Artoria. It was here that he discovered that Arthur was not a man, but a woman. During his time with Guinevere, as they tried to find ways to ease Artoria from her troubles, the two would slowly fall in love and enter in an affair. This would fill both of them with guilt, not for stealing his king's wife or being unfaithful to her husband, but because of all the troubles that would follow when their love is discovered. And discovered it was. Sir Agravain found out about their affair. As soon as they were found out, Agravain threatened Guinevere, which enraged Lancelot. Sir Agravain would be one of the many knights who would die during the fall of Camelot. Due to the affair, Lancelot and Guinevere were branded as traitors. Guinevere was captured and was sentenced to execution. Lancelot went to save her, but in his desperation and anger, he slaughtered many of his fellow knights, including Sir Gaheris and Sir Garrett. He would flee back to his domain after this attempt. Artoria would later write a letter to Lancelot and Guinevere, forgiving them for their betrayal and telling them that they must have had a reason for loving one another. This in turn filled Lancelot with guilt, which would begin his slow descent into madness. As Artoria returns from her expedition in Rome, she and her soldiers were met with a sight none of them wanted to see. Camelot in disarray, their fellow countrymen slaughtering each other, and Mordred's army patiently waiting for the arrival of the exhausted travelers. It was only due to the aid of Sir Gawain and Sir Kay that Artoria was even able to make it ashore. In the following days, Artoria would face tragedy after tragedy. Sir Gawain would lose his life to Mordred in a one-on-one duel, tired and injured after his battle with Sir Lancelot, in revenge for what he did to his younger siblings. Many of the lords of Britain sided with Mordred, leaving Artoria vastly outnumbered. But most of all, she discovered why the rebels sided with Mordred. Never-ending war, barren lands, children dying of hunger. Artoria, the ideal king she was, told them to endure and persevere. That one day, they will see a brighter tomorrow. Artoria could do it. The people of Britain could not. They have reached their limits long ago. Ironically, because Artoria was the ideal king, she could not put herself in the places of those who do not bear her strength. For 7 days, the war raged on, and it was here, in the fields of Camelot, on the blood-soaked hill of countless corpses, that King Arthur would fight his last battle, where Artoria Pendragon would finally meet her destiny.
ようやくだな、アーサー王。
モードレットか。
長かった。ここにたどり着くまで長く戦場をさまよった。どうだ、あなたの国はこれで終わりだ。終わってしまった。私が勝とうとあなたが勝とうと、もはや何もかも滅び去った。なぜ自分に王位を譲らなかったのか。なぜ自分を息子と認めなかったのか。なぜ自分はこんな形で産み落とされたのか。なぜ答える。
アーサーの清掃が反逆者の臓腑を焼き刺し吹き飛ばした。反逆者の魔剣は王の兜を砕き頭蓋を割り、その片目と余命を奪った。アーサー王アルトリアは膝を折り、もう意味のない政権を杖にして丘となった騎士たちのムクロを一望した。おそらく誰も見たことのない素顔。必死に唇を閉ざし、涙しようとする己を抑えて、悲しみで呼吸を詰まらせながら、彼女はブリテンの終わりを見下ろし慟哭した。
私は多くの戦いを起こし、多くの命を奪った。だから私は誰よりもむごく死ぬと、誰からも憎まれて死ぬのだと受け入れていた。鬼、滅びるのは自分だけではなかったのか。愚かな死を迎えるのは愚かな王一人だけではなかったのか。これはない。こんなはずじゃなかった。こんな終わりを私は求めていたんじゃない。ブリテンが終わるのは分かっていた。でもそれはもっと穏やかな眠るような終わりだと信じていたのに。これは違う。断じて違う。私の死は容認できても、この光景は容認できない。
As Artoria despairs at her failure, mourning how she failed her country, her kingdom, her people, her knights, her queen, her friends, it was here that she would come into contact with a being that surpasses time and space. The Counterforce. It came before her, and here she made a pact with it. She would be frozen on this bloody hill, an eternal nightmare, until she acquired the Holy Grail. Time and time again, Artoria would answer the call, fighting for the Holy Grail, dreaming that she could attain her wish through it. Her desire for the Grail was to save her kingdom, but not by attaining the power to provide for her people, but to reverse her decision on the day of selection. It was a mistake. She should have never pulled the sword out of the stone. And so it shall be. If not for a certain sheet she encountered in this dream, when she awoke from that dream, she abandoned her quest for the Holy Grail and accepted her fate. During her unconscious state, Sir Bedivere found his king and brought her to a nearby forest, away from the battlefield. It was here, underneath a great tree, that Artoria awakened from her dream and gave Bedivere his final order.
たどり着いた森で騎士は王の体を大樹に預けた。王、すぐに兵を呼んでまいります。どうかそれまで辛抱を。
ベディビエール。
王、意識が戻られましたか。
うん、少し夢を見ていた。
夢ですか。
そうだ。あまり見たことがないのでな。貴重な体験をした。
それは。ではどうぞお気遣いなくお休みください。私はその間に兵を呼んでまいります。おう、何かご無礼な点でも。
いや、そなたの言い分に驚いた。夢とは目を覚ました後でも見れるものなのか。違う夢ではなく、目をつむればまた同じものが現れると。
はい、強く思えば同じ夢を見続けることもできるでしょう。 私にも経験があります。そのようなことはない。夢とはもともと一度きりで連続しないものを言う。それでも騎士は偽った。これが最初で最後の王に対する不正と詫びて。
そうか。そなたは博識だな、ベリビエール。ベリビエール、我が名犬を持て。よいか。この森を抜け、あの血塗られた丘を越えるのだ。その先には深い湖がある。そこに我が剣を投げ入れよ。
おお、それは。
行くのだ。ことを成し得たのならばここに戻り、そなたが見たことを伝えてほしい。
そうして騎士は3度にわたり剣の返還をためらった。騎士は王を惜しむあまり剣を捨てられず、湖からきびすを返し王のもとへと立ち返る。だが王はそれを見抜いていた。剣を捨てたと告げる騎士に王は命を守るがいいとだけ返答する。だがそれも終わり、もはや王の意志を変えられぬと悟った騎士は3度目にして剣を湖へと投げ入れた。聖剣は湖に帰る。3度にわたり丘を越えた頃、森は朝日にけぶっていた。戦場跡は遠く、血塗られた戦いの面影などない清らかな薄もやの中、湖に剣を投げ入れてまいりました。剣は湖の婦人の手に。確かに。
そうか。ならば胸を張るがよい。そなたはそなたの王の命を守ったのだ。すまないな、ベリビエール。今度の眠りは少し長く。
見ているのですか、アーサーを。夢の続きを。天は遠く、晴れかかった空は青い。戦いはこれで本当に終わったのだ。つぶやいた言葉は風に乗る。眠りに落ちた王は果てのない青に沈むように遠い遠い夢を見た。
Artoria Pendragon is finally able to rest. She is then brought to Avalon, the land of the Faes, where she rests for eternity. Legend says that when Britain needs saving once more, she will return alongside the Sword of Promised Victory to save the land and its people once again. Whether it's due to bias or not, Fate's iteration of Arthurian myths is one of my all-time favorites. There was so much that I didn't cover, like the fate of the other knights such as Tristan and Galahad, what happened to Merlin, and the whole confusing brain tumor thing that is Morgan Le Fay being three entities at the same time, and many, many more. Also, Artoria is just simply an amazing character. Her parallels to Shiro are really intriguing, how they both lived and existed for the sake of others and not themselves, how they're inhuman in a way, how their love blossoms and it helps them grow as a person, and how they finally understand how to live for themselves. The Fate Roots true ending is one of the most beautiful endings of a story that I've ever witnessed, and honestly, I highly suggest that you read the visual novel and read the manga. It's a manga. I'm pretty sure it's a manga. I remember just seeing the true ending somewhere, but definitely check it out if you can. That is why I am hoping, God, please, 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 you foldable, after you're done milking your cash cow known as Midslayer, please, please make a Fate adaptation. And while I'm at it, make a freaking Tsukihime anime, please, please. We know you can do it, and you'll probably do it better than you're doing Demon Slayer, please, please. But that's not important right now, so let's get started on the second half for Saber. Her abilities.
助けてもらったんだ。助けてもらったからには簡単には死ねない。俺は生きて義務を果たさなければいけないのに、死んでは義務が果たせない。こんなところで意味もなく平気で人を殺すお前みたいなやつに。七人目のサーバントだ。
とあなたが私のマスターか。
Artoria is one of the most powerful swordswomen in the Nasuverse. She may not have a technique that transcends time and space, one that can pierce the flesh of the divine, or a blade that can cut through emptiness and fate itself, but she is still one of the best in human history. She was a prodigy as a child, which continued to be honed as she reached adulthood. Compared to Archer, who is visibly giving his all just to keep up with Lancer or Berserker, Saber is capable of going toe-to-toe with them, fast enough to fight Lancer on even ground, and in Berserker's case, she can defend from his attacks head-on. She is skilled enough to beat enemies capable of feats beyond normal human capability with just her swordplay and a little reconnaissance. She is, to put it simply, a top-tier server that anyone would like to have. Now, before we could talk about her skills, we have to talk a little bit about another aspect in the Nasuverse. It's a little thing known as magic circuits. I can't promise that this segment will be simple, so just try to stay with me until the end, yeah? To put it as simply as possible, most characters in Fate handle magic and magical energy in two ways. One way is to generate OD, life force found in living organisms, and is used to power spells using your own generated reserves. These are contained in a sort of spiritual organ known as magic circuits. Alright, so the second way is to absorb mana from the air and from certain areas of the planet, such as ley lines. Why does this pertain to Saber? Well, she has the same magic circuits as most humans except for one factor. Merlin put in a dragon's magic core in her. How does this change things? Well, let's say a normal human generating OD is comparable to a small portable battery generator. Well, Artoria with a dragon's magic core is different in the fact that her OD generation is comparable to that of a nuclear power plant, and then some. She is essentially a walking magical energy generator. Alright, with that out of the way, let's do the same thing with Archer and talk about her skills before we go into her trump cards. Let's start with her class skills. Saber has Magic Resistance A, which is the same as Archer, but obviously better. She can cancel out 90% of spells that exist in the Nasuverse, and it makes her invulnerable to most magical attacks. She also has Riding B, which allows her to be able to ride anything that isn't a phantasmal beast, which is essentially a magical creature in normal people terms. With this skill, she is able to ride horses, sail ships, and even drive modern-day vehicles like cars and motorbikes. This skill is just useful for having options of getting around. Next up are her personal skills. Saber has Mana Burst A, which is a skill she uses that allows her to physically propulse mana in different methods. She can use it as a jet propulsion to boost herself at high speeds, use it defensively to push enemies back, or as a concentrated beam to attack enemies. Her bread and butter when it comes to her fighting style. It's this skill that allows her to travel across the battlefield at supersonic speed, and also why she is able to fight against Berserker, who is far more superior to her in combat. Next is Instinct A. Basically, it's a sixth sense of sort. It essentially allows Saber to predict the future in which she can see what her opponent can do or the result of an attack that's about to be done to her. It allows her to choose the best course of action for whatever encounter she is in. It also allows her to bypass visual and auditory influences. Although it is good at predicting attacks, it does have its flaws where if Saber does not know the true nature of the attack, like her fight with Lancer in Fate Zero, She can make a wrong prediction that can cause her to fight, but when it works out, it can save Saber from life-ending attacks such as Lancer's Gable, which reverses causality. It's why Lancer was so pissed that she dodged his lethal blow, although it was probably not just instinct that helped her, but also her luck stat. Charisma B. As the skill says, it's for someone that has high levels of charisma. This skill is only really effective in leading an army or persuading people, so there's not much else to say about it. Now that the skills are out of the way, we can get started on Saber's trump cards, her Noble Phantasms. Oh, wait, did I forget to mention what a Noble Phantasm was? A Noble Phantasm is the crystallization of a heroic spirit's legend. In other words, it's how the heroic spirit got popular in the first place and why they are remembered in human history. Archer uses a couple of Noble Phantasms, although none of them are his personally, with the sole exception being his Unlimited Blade Works, but even then, that's a technicality in itself. Noble Phantasms come in many forms. Someone stabbed a political figure in the bathtub? There's a Noble Phantasm for that. A reenactment of a singular moment in history, like defending your city from an invasion? Just look at Constantine the Knight here. You were a genius swordsman in life to the point that you created a technique where you do 3 consecutive thrusts in a single motion? Okita Soji, Sakura Saber. Writing a book? Ask Hans Christian Andersen. Want to copy that one Gundam scene? Look at Odysseus and his robot transforming Trojan horse. Yes, you heard me right. Someone is literally too horny and wants to... And the planet? That's a Noble Phantasm. As you can see, there are many types of Noble Phantasms, and even if some of them take creative liberties or are just original ideas, they usually take the form from whatever mythological or historical figure they are based on. Now, back to Saber. Her first Noble Phantasm is Invisible Air. This is a sort of air coating covering Saber's sword. Not only does it hide the length and shape of the sword, but it also boosts the slashing prowess of the blade. It can also unleash compressed wind as a projectile attack. Another thing that Saber can do is manipulate winds into enhancing other things that are not her sword. As seen here in Fate Zero with Saber's Curacer, a modified wait. A Yamaha VMAX. As seen here in Fate Zero with Saber's Curacer, a Yamaha VMAX motorbike that she modified using Invisible Air. Now, next up is Saber's most iconic Noble Phantasm. After all, what is a rendition of King Arthur without his legendary blade?
この明かりは星の希望。地を照らす命の証。見るがいい。エクスカイバー！ Excalibur. Okay, so Excalibur, the Sword of Promised Victory, is a really special blade in the Nasuverse. It is not simply a holy sword, but a holy sword of the planet. It is basically Earth's last line of defense, forged by the inner sea of the planet. Its power scales on how dangerous the adversary is towards the planet and humanity. Remember the White Titan? I know I said I wouldn't go too in-depth into it, but it was essentially an alien invader and an unknown human used Excalibur to defeat it. It was so powerful that Saber and her knights made restraints on the blade to seal away its full power. Only when certain conditions are met can Excalibur's true power be unleashed. And when it's at full power, or even when it's partially powered, it can unleash devastating beam attacks that can raise mountains to the ground, as shown in multiple iterations. Really, all you need to know is that Excalibur shoots big beams. Big golden yellow beams, and they are very, very powerful. Finally, we are at Artoria's last Noble Phantasm, the Sheath of Excalibur, Avalon, the ever-distant utopia. Not to be confused with Avalon, the Land of the Fays, Avalon, the Sheath, is a broken Noble Phantasm. If you thought Excalibur was broken, then... oh boy, I argue that this is way more broken. Avalon passively boosts the wielder's regenerative abilities by a landslide. With this, Artoria can regenerate from any injury, whether it's a pierced heart, all of her organs rupturing, or probably even if her entire lower body disappears. So long as her brain hasn't been destroyed, she can recover from it. But that's not all. When the Noble Phantasm is activated, it deploys a protective barrier that sends all attacks towards Avalon, the Land of the Fairies. Basically, she opens a portal to Paradise to get rid of whatever attacks is being sent her way. Artoria used Avalon to block Gilgamesh's Enuma Elish, which did this.
Yeah, it's no joke. It was so broken that during her time alive, her sister Morgan Le Fay stole it to make sure that Artoria wasn't invincible anymore. So yeah, those are Artoria's noble phantasms for her Saber class. Yes, you heard right, for her Saber class. She is qualified for 4 of the other 7 classes shown on screen right now. To showcase some of her other noble phantasms, she has Rangominiad, the lance that shines to the ends of the world. She used this spear to kill Vortigern. It has the same restraint as Excalibur, so it's fairly powerful to say the least. This will probably not be shown in the collab, but I wouldn't be surprised if it gets mentioned. There's also Caliburn, the Sword of Selection, and the sword she had before Excalibur. You remember this one, right? Although not as powerful as Excalibur, it's still a powerful sword in its own right. It might also make a cameo and probably also get a name drop just like Rongo Bongo. Saber's kit in HSR will probably be more simpler and predictable than Archer's. She would have Excalibur, obviously, and she would whack people with it with her basic attack. For her skill, she probably will use Invisible Air, doing AoE damage to everyone since, Destruction use AoE attack, but yeah. As for her ult, well, that's easy since they showed us what it looked like at the end of the concert. It's Excalibur. What else would it be? For her gameplay gimmick, since she is of the Destruction, she might lose HP when attacking or have a taunt where she loses HP. Then she can heal the HP lost every turn she gets thanks to Avalon as a trace passive. Probably along the lines of following My Day's fighting style, where you do damage and then they heal, and then you do more damage and then they heal. Something along those lines. That's how I imagine Saber's kit to be. For the traces, like I said, probably Avalon for passive healing or just a passive healing or a big damage mod for her damage output and HP scaling. She probably scales on HP. Honestly, that's all I can think of since Saber is a pretty simple but powerful character in Fate in general. I just hope she gets the justice she deserves, and if they do something more gimmickier than what I just said, then I'm happy with that, I'm not complaining. And there you have it. That's our poster girl, Saber. And I'm really looking forward to what her kit will actually look like in HSR. So yeah, that's basically, well, I say basically, but it's the most basic way I can explain Archer and Saber's past while talking about their abilities. Because Archer, there's a lot of stuff that I haven't talked about Archer, like how he got his cloak, his red holy shroud, as they call it. He was given that shroud by a character from another series called Tsukihime. It's the blue-haired chick called Ciel, but that's a completely other different story, and that's bits and pieces that Nasu himself gave through interviews. So for Archer, I'm just gonna stick to that. I'm gonna let you, if you want, to either watch the anime or read the visual novel and explore his and Shiro's character, like by yourself, on your own, at your own pace. Saber, on the other hand, is completely different because Saber, most of her past, I'm sure if you got this far, I'm pretty sure you've already saw and heard of it. There are segments where I put there's a dialogue, and then I put some images to go along with the dialogue. That dialogue comes from a drama CD called The Garden of Avalon, which is an adaptation of the light novel called The Garden of Avalon. The Garden of Avalon is like it's a sort of short stories that tie in the entirety of Saber's past and history and the historical interpretation of how Nasu did it. Right, so it was how Saber was born, how she was created, how she trained with the Merlin, her pulling Caliburn out of the stone, and then her reign as king, defeating Vortigern, the rebellion against Mordred, and her death, right? And then there's also bits and pieces that you get I think three POVs. One is from Gawain, which when they were fighting Vortigern, that was all Gawain's thought process. There was one about Lancelot that I did put in, which basically told about like his perspective and his thoughts on the king and during the fall of Camelot. And then there was the one with Bedivere, the last one that I put, that where Artoria dies and whatnot. But there's a lot about Saber's past. But the unfortunate thing is that the Garden of Avalon is stuck behind a language barrier. So the original light novel, which was created, I believe, during the Unlimited Blade Works, it was either anniversary or the anime release date. Either of those two, but it was created then, but it has never been translated into English, as far as I'm aware. And the same goes for the drama CD, which is basically an audiobook. There was that, but it never got an English adaptation because at the time, I think that was also when English dub was starting to get its foothold. Because as many of you know, most of the English dubs in the past were not so stellar, at least in my opinion. They were not so stellar compared to the English dubs of today, which are like really, really good. There's so many talented people out there for an English dub. And if they made an English dub of the drama CD of the Garden of Avalon, I am completely down. I would be down to hear these people perform in these drama CDs and whatnot. But basically, the Garden of Avalon is stuck behind a language barrier, right? It's stuck behind a language barrier, and if you don't know Japanese, you're kind of screwed, right? So most of what I got, like all the subtitles that I put for my segments of the Garden of Avalon, where I put the little extrait, how do you say that? Oh my god, my French. I only know that word in French, le extrait, whatever. But that little segment with the Garden of Avalon, all those translated subtitles, those aren't me. Those are, I'm gonna give credit to the fan translators who translated the light novel and who also translated the drama CD. Because like I said, there's a difference between the drama CD and the light novel, but and then again, yeah, those guys translated it. All I did was modify it so that it fits my perspective, how like the characters would say those words and how I think that scene would have played out with the words that I wanted them to express and whatnot. But if you want to give most of the credit, give it to them. Like, you could easily look it up. You can look up Garden of Avalon English translation, and same thing with the drama CD, and you'll find it. And they're a really, personally, I think they're a really good watch and listen to. They're like I said before at the end of the explaining the Saber story. I think that this is one of the coolest and amazing like representation of Arthurian mythos. It's just wondrously beautiful, and Saber's passing away scene is just, not to say that someone passing away is good, but it's beautiful, man. It's really beautiful, especially if you played the Fate Brood, and yeah, there's that. But yeah, it's really unfortunate, but most of it is stuck behind a language barrier, and I want to give credit to those fan translators who actually did it, while I just stole their work and kind of modified it. But in a way, I wanted to put this because I wanted people to at least experience it in some form and then be like, oh, let me go see the original if you know Japanese. Or, oh, let me just go see the fan translation. Let me see these fan translations, right? And then I can read from there, and then I'd be like, oh my god, this team did a really good job, or this guy did a really good job translating and whatnot. So yeah, this is me promoting the Garden of Avalon. So if you're really interested in Fate, if you're somewhat interested in Fate, or you're just simply interested in Saber's past and her history, then I highly suggest you go read the Garden of Avalon. It's really good. It's really good. But after that, dude, I'm so excited about the event, dude. It's been on my brain for forever. I wanted to get Cypher, dude. I really wanted to get Cypher, but I am hard skipping her. Just to get my hands on Saber and Archer. At least one. Well, Archer's free, but at least one copy of Saber and one copy of each of their light cones, dude. I'm saving up. Like, I'm a greedy bastard. I greeded on Hyacinth's banner. I was supposed to skip her, but I rolled for her last seconds and I got her in like 40 rolls, and I played with fire because it was 50-50, right? So that, like, justify I'm skipping Cypher just for these two. Like, oh, I'm so excited, and I really hope this event is good. Like, oh, there's gonna be so many memes. I hope they put in the memes and everything, and hopefully we get some cameos, like I mentioned with in the Saber thing, where they talked about like where I said that maybe Rongo Miniat or Caliburn is gonna be mentioned. I really hope that's a thing, because that's gonna be cool. Like, let's say I don't know, someone with a pole arm, maybe Daniel gets Archer's like, oh, this guy reminds me of Lancer, blah blah blah, or something like that, right? I think that'd be really cool. Or oh my god, wait, would it be possible? No, because we're going back to Penacony. I know we're going back to Penacony for that, but imagine if My Day somehow makes it to the thing, and then both Saber and Archer are like, oh, not this guy again, because they think it's Gilgamesh. Because My Day is just a really good homage. It's a really good homage to Gilgamesh. Like, it's just really good. But besides that, like, I'm really excited for the event, and hopefully we'll get a rerun. And if we get a rerun, I don't know, adding Lancer or Berserker or Assassin or True Assassin or Caster, adding the Rider, right? The only character that did something really good in Heaven's Feel. Oh my god, poor Ryder. She got shafted in so many of the other routes, but yeah. It'd be cool if we get a rerun and then we get new units alongside it, because yeah, I'd really like that. And can I say that also I've been enjoying like all the fan interaction and all the artists. The amount of artists that worked on Fate doing HSR and Fate collabs, like they're really good. I really like what they're doing. It's really fun seeing like this isn't fan art. This is official art of two really popular, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not dissing the other collabs that Fate did, but like, you know how most of the collabs are like they're very obscure or like not a lot of people know about it, but this is like two fandoms with a very dedicated fan base merging together, and you see a bunch of official art, not fan art, official art of these crossovers. It's really cool to see this. And then there's also like there was also what's its face? I remember seeing this one fan comic, right, where this is only funny because of Japanese dub. If you don't listen to Japanese dub, but here's a little background check. Like I've explained. Here's a little bit of like lore, I guess you could say. So, Trailblazer, Stell specifically, her voice actress in the Japanese dub is Yui Ishikawa. Her voice actress is Yui Ishikawa, and Yui Ishikawa worked in Fate series. She worked in the Fate series. She voiced two characters. One is Hakuno Kishinami, or Hakunon, because it's just like a Trailblazer. There's one that's male, one female, so the fan base usually calls the female one a Hakunon with an N. And she also voices Artoria's sister, Morgan Le Fay. So there was this really funny comic. I'll see if I can find it. There's this really funny comic where Stell talks and Archer and Saber both get like Vietnam flashbacks after hearing it, because Saber thinks that it's Morgan and Archer thinks it's Hakunon. And the thing is that for Saber it makes sense, right? Because it's Morgan Le Fay, right? You get you're one of your mortal enemies. You hear someone that sounds like you're one of your mortal enemies, right? So like, whoa, oh my god. And then there's Hakunon, right? So Hakunon, the thing that why Archer gets PTSD is that Hakunon's a little bit of a troll. She kind of says some weird stuff. She does some funny shit with her like deadpan face, and she's also the harem queen. By harem queen, I mean she gets all the guys and all the bitches. Something along those lines. But like Hakunon's like one of those goofy like troll characters, right? So that's why Archer gets PTSD and whatnot. So like I'm loving all the fan and the overarching interactions that weren't there in the beginning and just started popping up now, right? So it's just really cool and fun. But yeah, other than that, like I had a lot of this is my first video and I had a lot of fun just like doing it. Like there was a little bit of an issue where like 20% of my files got corrupted. Luckily I was able to save it back, but like oh my god, I was about to fail that. I was about to give up, but yeah. Other than that, thank you for watching. It's what, more than an hour, and I'm extending it by what, 12 minutes or so. No, it's 13. Hit the 13-minute mark. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you stuck around for this long, I really appreciate you hearing me yap and doing a very mediocre attempt at explaining stuff or like doing this whole video thing. And if you're willing to, I'd like it if you ask for feedback and tell me if there's some things that I can do better, some things that I'm doing already great. Is there a way that I can improve? Is there something I'm not doing too well? I'd really appreciate the constructive criticism, right? Something along those lines. But other than that, you'll probably see me around. I have a lot of ideas. Like I have another Fate idea. I'm gonna shill a little bit the Fate HSR thing, but this is gonna be an explicitly Fate video, I believe. That I'm pretty sure. I'll definitely be back. I just don't know how long it's gonna take. So if you like my content, I don't know, you could probably stick around and I'll make some other stuff. But other than that, thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope it was very helpful for those who do not know about Fate. And if you knew about Fate, then well, this is a nice way to either reminisce or get your information in check, or to fact check me. In fact, fact check me if I said something wrong, if I decided to make some fan fiction thing that I said inside the video, go ahead, correct me. I 100% accept it, because I want to get everything as accurate as possible. And I'm not gonna lie, I kind of got lazy at one point when I was doing my research, because there's a lot of shit that I covered. But other than that, yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you around.